Hey, LinkedIn, and welcome to Business Unusual. This is a live show where we talk about the changing nature of work. I'm Susie Jackson. I am a news editor at LinkedIn. Let's take a look at some of the top stories professionals are talking about today, September 14th. Another iconic retailer filing for bankruptcy. Century 21 saying its insurance provider failed to pay $175 million the chain says it's owed. The luxury fashion discounter will close its 13 locations and liquidate its assets. Nearly 4,000 employees are impacted. Walmart taking its competition with Amazon sky high. Walmart starting to test drone deliveries of groceries and other essential items in partnership with Flytrex. These tests happening in Fayetteville, North Carolina. This comes right after Amazon received FAA approval to test its own deliveries over US soil. For more stories like this, you can check out the LinkedIn news module. It's to the right of your news feed. If you're on your desktop, you can see it in the graphic there, or if you're on mobile, by clicking into your search box. We have been polling professionals on the LinkedIn news page, and we want to hear from you as well. Have you worn more casual or athleisure clothing as a result of quarantining at home? Let us know your votes throughout the show today. You can say A for yes, B for no, or if you say C for it depends, let us know why. Give us a comment and tell us where you're at with that. We'll check in on results at the end of the show. That brings us to our main story. And if you answered yes to our poll question that you're wearing more athleisure, it may not come as a surprise to you that COVID-19 has presented an unprecedented challenge for the luxury retail industry. Economies have collapsed, demand is changing, and with the shutdown of tourism in all key markets, luxury brands have been forced to revisit the way they market and the way they manufacture. Joining us today for their insights in this space are Claudia D'Arprizio, a partner at Bain & Company and leader of the firm's luxury goods practice, as well as Frederica Lovato, also a partner at Bain, who, along with Claudia, authors the firm's annual luxury reports. They are coming to us today from Milan. Claudia, Frederica, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Great. Claudia, I want to start with you. COVID began this reckoning, or didn't begin this reckoning in the luxury industry. It was on a pretty bad path before that. Can you give us some background on that?
Yes, sure. So in reality, luxury good was in a period that we were calling new normal. So now that this word is a little bit abused after the COVID crisis, in reality, the luxury industry was already facing a phase of single-digit growth rate after many years of strong growth. But beyond the surface of this single-digit growth rate, there was a very, in our opinion, healthy market. In reality, you were having brands growing much higher than these rates, so up to 30-50% every year, while brands that were stuck in a sort of transition, or brands that were declining. So looking at the overall market, you don't have the right picture, while you have very different performances brand by brand, and in particular brands that were being able to intercept the big change in demographics behind this market, in particular the big demographical shift towards millennials and Gen Z, are the ones and were the ones and are still the ones that are overperforming the market by order of magnitude, delivering a totally different value proposition from the past. And it's really about engaging with those younger consumers and enlarging the proposition of luxury that is not just craftsmanship and exclusive products, but entering into the field of broad creativity, self-expression, sustainability, and activism, all topics that are very relevant for the younger generations that ask for excellence to those brands across all the possible topics of conversation and touch points.
Thank you for that. And I do want to get more into what some of those new millennials and Gen Zers are asking of brands. I think it's an interesting moment to be asking more of an industry that is going through such crisis. But Federica, first, I want to hear a little bit more about the report that you and Claudia just co-authored and released in May. In that report, based on data up to that point, you were predicting 20 to 35% contraction for the year. I'm curious if that outlook is still the same now, several months later, with more information.
Yeah, thank you for this very important question. Yes, we can confirm our forecast for the year. So, few months have passed, as you said, but we have seen the worst quarter ever for this market, which has been the second quarter of 2020, where this market collapsed between minus 50 and minus 60%. Then the second half of the year is being more positive for brands. There are brands that are positively growing this quarter versus last year. Some others that still struggle in recovering. That is why we can confirm these, let's say, large brackets for the performance of the year. Of course, not taking into consideration other possible lockdowns and other possible severe hit for this crisis.
Okay, so we're hearing that the numbers that you stated in May still look pretty steady, a big contraction for the industry, barring, of course, any more lockdowns as, say, schools start to reopen, things like that, life gets back to normal. I want to take a minute to just welcome some of the folks joining us from the stream. We've got folks from all over the world. David from New Mexico, Joyce from New Jersey, Yves from Paris. We have Eduardo from Miami and Lee from California. Thank you so much for joining us on Business Unusual today for this conversation about changes in the luxury fashion industry. Federica, I want to stay with you for a moment. In the report, you wrote that as consumers emerge from these lockdowns slowly, the way they're going to see the world will have changed, and luxury brands are going to need to adapt. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you were thinking there?
Yeah, of course. And as you said, I said this back in June. So I referred back then mostly to the attention and the sensibility that customer had going back to normal life, to personal safety. So that was why it was so important for brands to have a key attention in guaranteeing safety in stores, and also thinking to creative way of bringing back customers to store. Actually, after a few months, what has not changed is the increased sensibility from luxury customers across different points, not only personal safety and security, but also more in general, given also the recent facts, also to diversity, to cultural relevance, and to inclusion. So they have increased their level of sensibility in general, and they expect brands to respond actively to their needs and to what is happening in today's world.
Do you think that there are certain areas of the market that are better positioned to respond to those new demands from consumers than others? Claudia, why don't you go for that one?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I think we think that it's really brand based. So this is not category or segments. It's really in the hands of the different brands to both really restate their point of view and their authentic purpose, and to really communicate this purpose to the final consumers. And it's up to them to really engage with them in a new, creative, and modern way. So it's for sure we have seen some categories performing better than others, in particular accessories over ready to wear for the lockdown constraints and for the different way we are living every day, but also in particular because some categories are also more penetrated online, and the e-commerce channel is by far the channel that is fast growing the overall market. And it's clear that the strategies of the brand is now really to really enforce and empower this channel as much as possible to prevent and other periods like the lockdowns, and to gain resilience given the big turbulence that the overall retail environment is living. But I think that it's really brand by brand strategies that are winning here.
We have Chris in the stream here joining us. He is saying that he works in the high-end furniture industry and that it's performing very well, saying that custom projects are still dominating his business there. So we do see, that makes sense. People are home, they want to spruce up the place that they're spending all this time now. And Claudia, you're talking about some of these brands are going to get it right. But I'm also interested in what happens if they get it wrong. Are we going to see consolidation in the industry post-COVID? One thing that struck me from your report is a lot of luxury watch companies aren't even set up with online channels to begin with. So where do you see this going forward after things start to return to normal?
Yeah, this is exactly what I was referring before. So there are a big number of brands that are still stuck in finding the right formula to really engage with consumers. And of course, e-commerce and digital touch points were playing an important role, even if these are just enablers, while it's important to really change the message. Having said that, it's clear that there are a lot of brands that were already not performing super well, or at least they were surviving before the pandemic. They are now really running out of cash, or really need for injections, the injection of money, but in particular of capabilities and maybe management talent in order to reinvent their value proposition and succeed in the next wave of growth. So yes, we will see consolidation. As you know, this industry is already very consolidated, and and it's clear that big groups are performing better than, and on average, than independent brands. We will see consolidation at brand level. We will see consolidation at also other steps of the value chain. If you think to all the suppliers of luxury brands that are mainly European, very artisanal workshops that need to managerialize and grow in size in order to really cater with the new opportunities, and with brands that are becoming always more demanding in terms of velocity and accuracy, as well as at retailer level. So we, as you were saying before, there are bankruptcies of luxury retailers in US, and there will be a shake and a disruption also in the distribution footprint.
Okay, so we're hearing from you on a brand level there. Federico, follow us up with who's predicted to win geographically. Who's going to be leading the revival in luxury shopping in terms of where you are in the world?
Well, so far, China is definitely leading the recovery. So there are some brands that are not only day to day and month to month versus last year positive, but there are brands that are already year-on-year positive versus last year, which is also normal, let's say, given that China locally is now intercepting the big wave of tourist shopping that last year Chinese did abroad and while traveling. So they are repatriating this spending. But the real challenge was and is for luxury brands to intercept the same flow of customers in China and in their Chinese stores, and there is where we see winners and losers among brands. So China for sure is the winners, and on the other side of the spectrum, of course, Europe is the most hit area. Given that almost 50% of European luxury sales are historically linked to tourists, and of course this year was not seeing these flows.
So Federica, I have a question from Andrea, or a comment from Andrea here in the stream. She says, luxury goods are nice to have, but in times of crisis, will always be highly impacted as contraction happens and people focus their money and effort on higher necessity items due to uncertainty in the market. We just had a graphic up a moment ago. Is that at odds with what Andrea is saying? We are seeing a dip, but you're also seeing a real spike in another direction in certain markets.
Well, yeah, for sure. We see the appetite for these markets still very, very much alive, not only in China, but also if we take online. Online is really flying. So there are channels that are really double digit within online. So both the e-commerce directly managed by brands, but also some e-tailers that are really well performing this year and intercepting, of course, all the lost footfall, physical footfall in stores, and the redirection of customers online. And for sure, these products during a sanitary crisis that unfortunately is becoming also a global economic crisis are not necessary items to be bought. But for sure, this is the moment where we will see who will be the winners and losers in the midterm in these industries, in terms of players rethinking their strategies and really retooling for the new world and the new era of luxury.
So we're here with experts from Bain & Company and from the luxury fashion industry, talking about the winners, the losers in this time of COVID. I want to bring up our poll again for a moment to bring us back to where you are as our viewers. We're hearing from our experts that online demand for luxury goods is still pretty steady. But what do you think? Have you been wearing more casual or athleisure clothing as a result of quarantining at home? Keep giving us your votes throughout the show. Yes, no, or if it depends, let us know. Are you maybe dabbling in some luxury goods yourself? Our experts here saying that those channels online are still seeing some health. Claudia, I want to come back to you for a moment. It is a tough environment for retail broadly. We've seen bankruptcies at a lot of big retailers. How does the luxury segment respond to that climate? If they can't, we're talking about online being a bit better, but if whole channels are being shuttered, what does that mean for how the industry sees itself going forward?
It is for sure a tough environment, and as said, this crisis is accelerating maybe a disruption in the physical distribution that maybe could have happened more slowly. It is probably clear that there are too many square meters dedicated to luxury goods retailing, and that probably a restructuring of these square meters were necessary. Having said that, this is happening quite quickly and quite dramatically, and the brands really are trying to partner with their strategic retailers in order to really improve this situation. First of all, I think better planning of collection, being more near with consumers, selling to consumers the products when they need them. So buy now, wear now products, and overall planning to produce less products, and so to reduce the leftover at the end of the season, and to try to be more really overall sustainable in the overall value proposition. So these are just few things that the brands together with the retailers can try to put in place to really improve the performance going forward. For now, I think that it's also important to have to really strengthen the relationships with those among both suppliers and retail partners that are strategic for the brands, and to try to share the risk of this pandemic along the value chain.
So earlier in the episode, and just now again, we're talking about the younger generations becoming that next market for luxury goods, and that their demands are a bit different. We're talking about sustainability here. Is this a moment, as the fashion industry has to kind of recalculate, if those brands, those consumers are coming in and saying they want a more sustainable product, is this a time for brands to really pivot to meet that moment? Are they able to with their supply chains and existing methods? Frederica, how about for you?
Well, I think yes, there is a moment, and it was yesterday actually. So all brands and all groups are really thinking and rethinking and understanding how to win their battles on sustainability. Of course, fashion, as we all know, is among the highest polluting industry in the world. So of course, luxury players cannot win every battle around sustainability. They need to choose what battle to win, and every brand need to choose what to win and go for it. Because what consumers and specifically Gen Z consumers are asking is authenticity and is legitimacy in playing for what is important and legitimate for the brand, and also a sort of brand activism in really pursuing that battle on sustainability. I would add that if sustainability was yesterday's battle. So all brands should already be work in progress on these. Really, today's challenge for all brands is diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is really today's battle for them, and each one of them needs to take a stance and needs to means for something for consumers.
So, Claudia, we're hearing there the opportunities there are for sustainability for the companies who are situated to actually take those reins. But I'm curious about maybe we have entrepreneurs watching us who might be our next generation of designers of brands. Where are the opportunities for them there if you're just starting from scratch in this industry?
So luckily, this is a big market, and consumers are always willing to get newness and new things, and they look for insurgent brands and insurgent business model. When we say insurgent, we mean brands or retailers that are able to disrupt the status quo and to really put creativity not only in the product but also in some other elements of the value proposition. This is happening in consumer goods at large, in beauty a lot, and is happening also in luxury. So we think that there are some mega trends. One that Federica was discussing is sustainability at large, diversity and inclusion, but also self-expression, inclusivity in the broad sense. It's clear that there are many consumer trends that are still not totally met. And in particular, in fashion, there are a lot of insurgent brands that are mushrooming, while luxury is much more traditional in the way they're doing things. So around digital, sustainability, broad consumer trends, there are a lot of opportunities. And I think for new brands, new designers, but also new retailers, I think, for instance, to the second-hand market, or to the rental opportunity, or in general to convey also luxury service around the product to the people where they live at home, or where the people decide to live, since we are also seeing what we call wealthy ruralization, so wealthy people abandoning the big cities, and they will need a lot of service if they will decide to live, I don't know, in Napa instead of San Francisco. And they will need a very exclusive kind of service level. So a lot of opportunities in reality in a market that is very big and at the end very healthy, because it is clear that these are not necessary products, but in reality, in particular in a period of crisis, people want a psychological relief, and so these are more needed products than many other products in reality.
Thank you. And we've got Tim here echoing some of those sentiments in the stream, talking about concerns and decline of customer base for some of these brands. So you addressed that. Quentin is saying that same thing. It's time where people who live outside their financial status hopefully get a wake-up call to get back to the basics. Claudia, I really love that insert that you talked about creativity, not just in terms of designing the clothing or the products, but this is a time for creativity in how the business is run as well. I think that's a great moment to end on for any of the entrepreneurs watching us who are trying to try their hand in this business, or any of the people in retail or fashion who are joining us on the show. Thank you two so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was Claudia D'Arpizio and Federica Lovato from Bain & Company. They run the luxury practice there. I want to thank them for joining, and thank you for being on the show as well. I want to take a look at what the results of our poll are to see what you guys maybe are wearing today as we watch the show together. We wanted to know, have you worn more casual or athleisure clothing as a result of quarantining at home? And an overwhelming percentage of you, 86%, saying yes. We had yes votes from Patricia, Heidi, George, Mia, Dolores, Nancy, Thad, Michelle, Gisela, and Gracie. Thank you for voting. We had some no's though as well. Maybe you are some of the folks shopping in those online luxury channels that our guests were talking about. Momo, Navina, and Danielle all said no, not wearing more athleisure. And some of you said it depends. Robin and Tim says that for official video meetings, that's an exception when we get a little bit dressed up. But one member said that they are wearing a suit and high heels every day since March. Gosh, bless you. That's a big commitment to fashion and to your presence on a video chat. So thank you. I'm sure your colleagues are going to thank you for that as well, for bringing it. Tomorrow on Business Unusual, Caroline Fairchild, my co-host, will be speaking to Precious Williams on how to perfect your elevator pitch. 3 LinkedIn members are going to join for live feedback on how to do that. So you won't want to miss that show. It's going to be really exciting. That's tomorrow at noon Eastern. This has been Business Unusual. We are here from the LinkedIn news page just about every day at 12 Eastern. I'm Susie Jackson. Thanks so much for joining us.